I'll call to order the September 9th, 2020 meeting of the Contractor State Licensing Board. My name is David Delatorre, the CSLB's board chair. First, I want to start by welcoming our new board member. On August 12th, 2020, Governor Newsom appointed Donald Giratano. Don fills one of the two C specialty contractor positions, holding a C4 and C36 license. Don has served as the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, and President of DRG Construction since 2013. Prior to 2013, he has served in various leadership roles in the construction industry. Don is a member of the California Plumbing and Mechanical Contractors Association. Don, congratulations and welcome to the board. Felice, can we take roll call and confirm that we have a quorum?
David Delatorre.
Here.
Kevin Albanese.
Here.
Frank Altamira.
Here.
Augie Beltran.
Here.
Miguel Gonzalez. Absent. Don Giratano.
Here.
Susan Granzella?
I'm sorry to interrupt, please. Miguel is here. He's a new member, so he may be having problems with his mute, but he should be here.
Okay.
You may want to try him again.
Miguel Gonzalez.
Yes, Miguel Gonzalez is here.
Okay. Susan Granzella.
Here.
Diana Love.
Here.
Paula Richardson. Absent. James Mullane.
Marlowe's here.
Okay. Jim Mullane.
Here.
Johnny Simpson.
Here.
Nancy Springer. Absent.
That's it? Okay, so it appears that we do have a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Also joining us today is Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Corcoran, CSLB staff, and our board legal counsel, Jason Hurtado. At this time, I ask that you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we continue, I would first like to take this opportunity to say that our thoughts go out to everyone whose lives have been directly and indirectly impacted by the August lightning fires, and with the brave men and women in the front lines battling the blazes. This is our third board meeting where board members, the public, and staff are all participating remotely, so bear with us. Today's meeting is not being video recorded. Board members, when you would like to comment at any time throughout the meeting, please use the hand icon to raise your hand. I will call on you to speak. At that point, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. If you could also click again on the hand icon to lower your hand. Public Affairs Chief Rick Lopes is serving as our meeting moderator. He will be assisting us by monitoring the public teleconference line.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I could just interrupt for a moment. Mary Tykert has joined as well.
Great. Elise, if you can note that.
Actually, if we can just for a moment, Mary, if you can please just check your microphone to make sure we can hear you, okay?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will begin with agenda item B, which is for public comment and requests for agenda items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of the consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I am limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments do not involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time where you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we would encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and we're not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda of a future meeting. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Members of the public, if you joined us through the WebEx link and would like to make a comment, use the chat feature to send a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you joined us by calling in and would like to make a public comment, please press *3. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. Are there any comments? Board members, please raise your hand if you have an agenda item you would like placed on future meetings, on a future meeting agenda. Okay, seeing none. Rick, are there any members of the public who wish to address the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have somebody standing by. JP Tenore, please go ahead and make your public comment. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, there's a lot of problems with the gig economy. Before I go renewing my C7 license low voltage or upgrading it to a C10, I'd like to address problems with the gig economy and so-called independent contractors doing cabling services as part of Work Market, OnForce, Field Nation. And then also there's other traditional contracting. Mine's kind of a little bit specialty because it's in technology, but like companies like Workyard, where they're not really employees, and they're their own boss supposedly, but that's kind of up for debate. I've noticed that there's a couple of things. I reported some cases where I had proof of screenshots where just simply because there wasn't an enforcement agent past 8 p.m., they didn't get into trouble. And I'd like to have some enforcement action against, because it doesn't make sense for me to even, I can go into technology or I can go into cabling services. And right now I've been sticking into technology a little bit more. And before I go renewing my license, I'd like to address companies, like there's one company that in particular, I won't mention names, where it's they go into restaurants and they have like 2 or 3 employees that do field service, and the rest of the gig economy, and they handle all the major chains, and some of which happens to be cabling. I also want to get those companies into trouble. I also want to. There are national service companies, some of which it's hard to get licenses in all 50 states. I'd like to propose that they get licenses, at least as you get a salesperson's license, and that's for that particular company to make it legitimate. And I'd like to give them the opportunity to make it right, because they aren't gross violators necessarily, and they happen to be large companies. I don't know if that made sense, but anyway, I have 3 minutes, but I guess I'm done with that. I've reported it a couple times. I've even met with the SWIFT team once when I was up in Northern California. No idea what the gig economy was at that time, and I'd like to bring this up, and it's a major problem these days, and I'd like to get the gross violators in trouble. And then I'd like to preserve some of the national companies that give them a chance to make it right, where they do get a license in California, because they have to get a license in all 50 states. Some are very legitimate.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tenori. Also, Mr. Chair, that's the only public comment we have, but Nancy Springer has joined the meeting. So if we can just quickly check her audio. Nancy, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. Chair, there is no other public comment at this time.
Thank you, Rick. Felice, can you kindly note that Nancy's in? Nancy joined us.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no further comment. Moving to agenda item C. Update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. This is an oral update. There are no materials to reference in your board packet. I will now turn it over to Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Holmes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce myself and to provide a department update. I'd like to congratulate your new member, Donald Giratano, on his appointment and welcome him to the board. I'm new as well. I was appointed by Governor Newsom to serve as Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations beginning June 1st. I most recently came from the Senate, where I was Legislative Director for Senator Jim Bell. Before my time in the legislature, I served at the Secretary of State's office as Assistant Deputy. I've always been passionate about consumer protection, and so I'm very happy to be here at DCA working with the boards and bureaus. I am part of a new leadership team, as you know. In January, Governor Newsom appointed Lourdes Castro Ramirez as the new Secretary of the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency, effective March 2nd. Governor Newsom appointed Jennifer Simoes as DCA's Deputy Director of Legislation and Megan Allred as Deputy Director of Legislation. Finally, on April 16th, Christine Lally was appointed by Governor Newsom as the Chief Deputy Director of DCA, and she joined us in July. Now that Director Kirkmeyer has her team in place, she can devote even more time to her top priorities. I'm happy to report that in July, the DCA Budget Office and Office of Information Services launched 4 new budget expenditure and revenue reports utilizing fiscal information. The reports are fast, detailed, and easy to generate. The 4 new reports can be produced using DCA's Quality Business Interactive Reporting Tool, or QBIRT. The fast, accurate reports with clean data will aid board staff in providing budget reports in your meeting materials. DCA is very pleased to be providing these reports and is working on 3 more budget reports for the future. Another DCA priority is regulations, improving timelines and transparency. DCA's regulations unit was created by DCA Legal to directly assist boards and bureaus with regulations packages. The department also developed an online system to electronically manage and track regulations packages and streamline review called Sharewell. Sharewell testing with a pilot cohort is now complete. There will be regular check-ins with the pilot groups to solicit feedback, and the feedback will be evaluated to determine the next stages of the rollout. Our work continues, even though COVID-19 has changed the way we do business now and in the future. DCA temporarily closed all offices to the public in March in response to state and local stay-at-home orders to reduce the spread of COVID-19. DCA and the boards and bureaus have implemented telework plans and have required physical distancing for employees who cannot telework. DCA offices reopened to the public on June 15th with preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. We are truly grateful to you for your continued service and to your staff who are being so flexible. I know you have many staff contributing to contact tracing and other emergency efforts. This work is very important, and DCA thanks you. One of the few upsides to staying home is the opportunity to expand online and remote learning. I want to invite you to participate in DCA's board member orientation, which is being offered as 2 half-day sessions on WebEx, October 21st and 28th. New board members are required to attend the training within their first year of appointment. You can register on DCA's board member resources page. I look forward to getting to know you better, and the day we'll meet in person. In the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm still fairly new, so I may not have an answer for you today, but I will find it. I'm here to help. Thank you again for inviting me to your meeting. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Karen. Board members, please raise your hand if you have any comments. Seeing none, Rick, is there any public comment?
No public comments on this item.
Next is the executive update. We will begin with agenda item D1, review and possible approval of the June 5th, 2020 and the July 24th, 2020 board meeting minutes. We will start with the June 5th, 2020 meeting minutes on page 11 of your packet. Do any board members have edits to the June 5th, 2020 minutes?
Augie Beltran, motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second for Albany.
Second.
So it's been moved and second. Any comments? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Elise, can you take roll call?
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Aye.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Miguel Gazar,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Mola Richardson,
Aye.
Jimmy Lane, absent. Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Aye.
Mary Teichert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, please. We will now move to the July 24th, 2020 meeting minutes, which begin on page 29. Do any board members have edits to the July 24th, 2020 minutes? Please.
Augie Beltran, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Nancy Springer, second.
Is there any other board comment or any board comment? Hearing none. Rick, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Felice, please take roll call.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Abstain as I was not present.
Frank Altamira,
Aye.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Marla Richardson, absent.
Aye.
Okay. Jimmy Lane, absent. Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Aye.
Mary Teichert. Absent. Motion passes.
Thank you, please. Next on the agenda is the Registrar report. We will be taking some items out of order on the agenda. First, I'd like if David can start by giving us an update on the expenditure reduction plan, which is outlined under the budget update on page 43 of the board packet. After, we will then have Stacy provide the remainder of the budget update and return to David to complete the outstanding items of the Registrar report. David, please provide an update on the reduction plan along with an update on COVID-19 and the effects on CSLB operations.
Thank you, Chair Delatorre. At the June 5th board meeting, the board directed staff to implement $7.1 million in cost reduction measures. The cost reduction measures included achieving $4.5 million in salary savings by maintaining 45 vacancies out of 425 budget approved positions. Subsequent to that June 5th meeting, there's been a few changes with our staffing that I want to provide an update on today. The enforcement representatives were reclassified to special investigators. This resulted in the majority of our investigators receiving a 5% wage increase. All staff received a 9.23% pay cut. What happened with the pay cut is that staff received 2 days off each month to compensate for that pay cut. When we took a look at what the 9.2% pay cut equated to as far as staffing, we found that it was equivalent to 25 staff positions. So that's a loss of productivity. In addition to the loss of productivity for the 2 days off each month, we've had to redirect 18 of our staff to COVID-19 contact tracing. The majority of the staff that were redirected came from our SWIFT unit. They were SWIFT units, they were special investigators. We have 47 staff that are participating in the Special Enhanced Family Medical Leave Program. This provides up to 12 weeks of time off for staff to care for family members. An example is staff that have children that are distance learning. We have a lot of staff that are now working either part-time or not at all. They're taking time off and they're not available to us. We took a look at the loss of productivity for that program, and it equates to 22 staff positions. The board directed us to maintain 45 vacant positions June 5th. I'm pleased to report that we've averaged more than 45 vacant positions since that time. As of today, we have 51 vacant positions. But when we took all that, we put it together, and it equates to 115 of our budgeted positions not being available to us. That's 25% of our workforce. And it's having a significant impact on our operations. As many of you know, and we heard from during the public comment today, we're not as effective as we once were with our SWIFT unit. Most of the staff now are redirected to COVID-19 contact tracing. Very limited response to unlicensed, uninsured practice leads. And Jesse Flores, our Deputy Chief of Enforcement, will talk about it a little bit more, but we're closing consumer complaints when we can't settle them, and the estimated financial injury is less than $10,000. We don't have staff available to work as effectively as we once did with DAs to work on public works investigations and with our state agency partnering. We've had to redirect staff from within all of the board divisions to help our licensing division, because the priority does remain on renewals and keeping our licensed contractors in business, and whatever it takes, that's what we're going to make happen. I know public affairs too has been impacted by the inability to fill a position that was vital to them. I talked to Jason Hurtado about this presentation this morning, and he told me that a board vote is not necessary to reduce the 45 threshold to perhaps 35. It's up to the board to decide if they want to do that. But I wanted to make this presentation today to ask you, to let you know that we would really like to reduce the 45 threshold to 35. We're committed to achieving that 4.5 million in salary savings, but to be effective in doing that, and in light of what's happened with the pay reductions and other loss of staff, we will need to, in my opinion, fill positions, and a number of 35 would be more realistic than 45. So that's my update on the expense reduction strategy and plan that was approved by the board. Back to you, David.
Thank you, David.
I wanted to cover, but I thought if we could talk about this and then have Stacy do the budget update, then you could kick it back to me and I could do the other items.
Well, thank you. And I would ask that staff continue prioritizing filling vacancies. Licensing should continue to be one of our top priorities. All right, so we will start our board discussion. Frank Altamara, would you like to share your comments? Is there any other board comment?
Yeah, hey, Dave, it's Kevin Albanese. To Dave, what sort of wildfire are we response are we anticipating that we're going to need to put up in addition to everything that we've talked about cutting back and whatnot, just out of COVID and the budget issue?
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin. I was going to talk about that in a few minutes, but it's perfect to talk about it now. We've had to direct resources to 8 counties, and it's always been a board priority that we provide materials in the wildfire zones, infected areas, that we have a presence. We work with the Department of Insurance. All that is happening. We've got the signs, we've got the materials delivered. In the county of Santa Cruz, they wanted staff to be on site, and we agreed to do that for approximately 10 days. But really it's difficult for us because now we're having to redirect staff, in some cases, to drive 100 miles each way to get to Santa Cruz to be present. And when we saw that the attendance was diminishing, we put a plan together. I want to thank Rick Loves for working with me on that. We put a plan together where now we can have staff answer the phone remotely, and they've agreed to that, so that'll help us. But that is a real resource challenge. And so that's, again, affecting our enforcement divisions because they're the ones that have to respond to that.
Are there any other board comments?
You know, I just throw out, Dave, and I don't know if it's appropriate with all the civil service laws and whatnot, but, you know, if there's opportunities for board members, I know that everybody's probably living close to or near a county impacted. If a board member can volunteer for a shift or go down and be present, if that would be appropriate through the chair and the registrar, there might be some opportunities for that.
Appreciate your comments, Kevin. We'll look into that. Any other comments? Hearing none. Rick, are there any public comments?
No public comments on this item. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I did just have a hand go up. Alexis Custer, can you please go ahead and make your comments? You have 3 minutes.
Oh, certainly. So I just wanted to make a comment. I'm a consumer, actually. Filed a complaint recently, and I just wanted to bring kind of a personal note and personal voice to this discussion. I'm one of those that has been impacted by that reclassification of the enforcement reps as special investigators. My claim has been ongoing for 6 months. And I know that this won't get solved in this conversation, but I really want to know what, and moving forward, we can expect as consumers and how we can be protected from rogue contractors that aren't doing their work when there's not really a way to investigate or enforce it. And these claims are being closed prematurely.
If I may, this is Dave Fote. I would ask that you follow up, that Jesse Flores follow up with you on your complaint. One thing we're going to talk about is how we're now able to go back out and into the field using certain safety practices so that we can be as responsive as possible to consumer complaints. So if you'd be willing to maybe in the chat feature, Rick, would that work? Or she could provide her contact information and Jesse Flores will follow up and we'll provide an update to the board members.
Yes, absolutely. Alexis, if you're able to send me a chat message, if you could send me your number on a private message, I'll be sure to pass it on and have Jesse contact you.
Certainly. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
No other public comments at this time.
Thank you, Rick.
David, excuse me. It looks like Frank Altamura and John also had their hand raised for this item. If we could just check with them.
Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
Proceed.
I fumbled my button the first time. With regards to the staff adjustments, we mentioned the staff that were reassigned to contact tracing. I was wondering if one, if that was a voluntary action, and then two, roughly what the timeline is for that staff continuing to be diverted to that task.
Yes, thank you, Frank. It was a governor's mandate that all state departments identify staff for redirection to COVID-19 contact tracing. And that was our allocation, was we had to find 18 staff to redirect. And they had to be, I don't really want to get into too much of the weeds with classifications, but they had to be at the associate general, the AGPA, Tanya, government program analyst position or higher. So that limited the type of staff that were available. And so that's why we went we looked at our SWIFT unit, and the SWIFT staff, for the most part, did volunteer for that assignment. And we were told the assignment would last between 6 and 9 months. Now, of course, if there's a vaccine and the virus is no longer such a threat, then we would hopefully get those staff back. But they are working as COVID-19 contact tracers for counties throughout the state.
Great, thank you.
There was another comment?
It's Don Giortano.
Welcome.
I'm learning as I go here, so I apologize if I dig too deep into the weeds. But are you able to indicate that at the meeting here, David, what the difference in dollars is between 45 and 35 people?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We generally look at the dollars being, just on round numbers, $100,000 per position. But the offset would be the salary reduction that occurred. And that was equivalent to, I think, 22.6 million. No.
Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none. This was informational only. No action is required by the board. Next, we move to agenda item D3, the budget update, which begins on page 39 of your packet. For that, I will turn it over to Budget Manager Stacy Paul.
Thank you, Board Chair, and good morning, everybody. So your budget update begins on page 39. And the first chart shows our fiscal year 2019-20, and this is the budget and expenditures through May 31st. The projection through June, which would be the end of last fiscal year, is that I think we'll have, I'm pretty confident that our expenditures will be 66.8 million on board expenditures, which is about 95% of our budgeted authority. We currently don't have the fiscal reports through June yet, and those should be coming out sometime this month or next month. So I'll be able to present that at the next board meeting. The 66.8 million plus the 5.5 million in mandatory external costs will total 72.3 in total expenditures. So in that 5.5 in mandatory cost includes 4 million in statewide pro rata and 1.5 million in annual statewide supplemental pension payments to the CalPERS, which ends in 2025. The chart directly below is the revenue for 2019-20, which came in slightly lower than projected at 67.2 million. You can see from the chart that we brought in almost the same as the prior year. Renewals seem to stay pretty steady. However, the revenue loss mainly came from the new licenses and app fees, from the delay in administering exams to new applicants, which resulted in roughly 1.9 million revenue loss. If you flip the page, you'll see our governor's budget for this fiscal year 2021. As a reminder, CSLB is funded entirely through a special revenue fund, meaning we receive no general fund support, except for the occasional one-time reimbursements for a disaster response. Our existence relies solely on the revenue collected from licensing fees.
I got contact information.
And enforcement disciplinary actions. The governor's budget gives us the spending authority for this year to spend 73.6 million. However, based on the expenditure cost reduction plan of 7.9 million, we project to only spend 66.5 million, which means our total expenditure with the 5.5 mandatory cost comes to 72 million. This, keep in mind, is about the same that we spent last year in 1920, 72 million. We're trying to keep our expenditures in line with what we spent last year. On the next page, page 41, is our fund condition. if you look at last fiscal year, 2019-20, you can see our expenditures and mandatory external costs were $72 million, and we only brought in $67 million. This $5 million imbalance depleted our reserve, resulting in a beginning fund balance starting this year in July of $5.3 million. In the same chart, if you look at the column projected current year 2021, you'll see our revenue projection for this year of $70.7 million. This is based on an average monthly revenue that has been collected over the last 6 months during the pandemic. So we feel fairly confident that we'll at least be able to bring in $70 million this year. Directly below that, you can see our expenditures and mandatory external cost at the $72 million, which includes the 7.1 reduction in expenditures approved by the board. Assuming all goes as planned, that's a $1.3 million shortfall, leaving us with a projected $4 million at the end of this fiscal year, which is approximately 3 months of reserve, far less than the optimum 6 months fund balance reserve. Moving on, if you flip the page, this is the update of the fee audit with CPS consultant. The fee study is necessary to determine CSLB costs to perform its mandatory functions. Review and processing of original applications for licensure. This study may support the need for a legislative fee increase at a later date. I'd also like to thank Board Chair David Delatorre for appointing a 2-person budget advisory committee consisting of board members Susan Granzella and Mary Teichert to review the draft report with the executive staff prior to the consultant presenting the findings at the December board meeting. And then lastly, I'd like to move on to page 44 and 47. That will is our statistical summaries. As you can see, over the last quarter, we saw a decline in new applications and the issuance of new licenses due to the pandemic. This was mainly due to the shutdown of exam administration over the last few months. During this time, renewals kept coming in and have stayed pretty steady and consistent. This concludes the budget update. Any questions?
Thank you, Stacy. Are there any questions?
Through the chair, this is Jim Ruane. If I could ask, since our operation is affected by COVID, I understand that, but it's also affected by these extraordinary wildfires. Is there any augmentation by FEMA or CalEMA that would be available to help our expenses?
That's Dave. Tanya, would you want to comment on that?
Sure. So we were given funding, but it was partial funding for the wildfires back in 17 and 18, and the funding came last year, but it was for a small amount. Stacey, you can correct me, but I think it was only for around $28,000, and our expenses were about triple that. So we are tracking every month with the budget office at Consumer Affairs our expenses as it relates to the wildfire. So that's our staffing, overtime, all of our supplies, and we are reporting that up through the administration. We are hopeful that we will receive some funding, but again, if it's any indication of last time, it typically comes, it won't come this fiscal year, it'll come like a year later, and we don't know what that amount will be, if there'll be funding at all for our program. So we really have to operate with our current budget and what we have authority for, and if we get it, then it's nice to have, but we've only gotten it one time in the past, and that was a couple years ago.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Any other comments?
And you are correct, Tanya. It was $28,000 this last time, and then $165,000 the year before. I mean, also keep in mind the contact tracers, we possibly could be reimbursed for that. So we are tracking that on a monthly basis to know full time when staff started reporting for that. So that way we can capture their personnel costs later on.
Any other comments? Okay. Well, with the budget projections showing expenditures exceeding revenue and the fee audit study being a few months from completion, we need to continue to be as physically prudent as possible. Is there any board discussion on this matter? We just went through that. This was informational only, no action is required from the board. Rick, is there any public comment?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you. We are moving back to the remaining items of the registrar's report. There are no materials in your forward to Mr. Foe.
Thank you. This is informational. I'd like to begin with our response to COVID-19, just to provide an update to you all. All CSLB offices are now open to the public except for the Berkeley Test Center. In alignment with Governor Newsom's goals, 75% of CSLB staff are continuing to telework. I want to thank Department of Consumer Affairs for hosting a webinar recently that was very helpful to our staff in implementing employee training, monitoring, and assistance strategies, because it's been a little bit of a change for us to have staff not on site yet working from home. We want to make sure that we're checking in with them, that we set goals with them each week, and that we're maintaining the same level of production. The Attorney General's office has provided training to our enforcement staff on how to effectively conduct interviews by video conference that can be used in courtrooms. So that's been beneficial to us. And as I mentioned earlier, we continue to look at all of our internal resources to assist with our core business functions. And we have staff from the executive office, public affairs, enforcement, and IT, all helping with the licensing processing to make sure that we keep up. So it's really all hands on deck, a group effort. With the chair's permission, I'll move on to the wildfire disaster response, have just a little more information to share with the board.
Please proceed.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we are continuing to provide materials at all counties that are impacted. We're working very closely with the Department of Insurance to post signs throughout the various fire zones. As many of you know, that I've been on the board for a while, the signs are very effective in encouraging wildfire survivors to use the CSLB website to determine how they can obtain information through the Disaster Help Center page. Also, what information is available through our social media channels and media outreach. And they warn survivors about the scams that are often targeted on them, and hopefully reduce the number of predatory contractors, many of them unlicensed, that are in the areas. We continue to work very closely with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and local agencies, including building departments, to collaborate our efforts with our limited resources, but also to issue press releases, conduct press conferences, participate in virtual town hall meetings and webinars. And I think, as Kevin said earlier, there's an opportunity for board members to assist here. I think it's certainly worthwhile work, and maybe if a board member was available to field some calls throughout the day, or I don't think you would get a lot of calls, but you'd get some, that could be very helpful. And also to work with us on the virtual town hall meetings. We'd welcome that opportunity. Our Public Affairs Office continues to work closely with district attorneys and getting press releases out. Rick reported this morning that we've been working very closely with Santa Cruz and Monterey counties, and a press release did go out in Monterey County within the last few days. We work very closely with local law enforcement agencies, and we're looking for opportunities to conduct sting operations when it's safe to do so. But in the interim, we will be conducting sweep operations with the Department of Insurance and having a presence in these areas. And finally, it's just, we really do appreciate the collaboration we have with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and the ability to continue to work with them on helping the survivors to rebuild effectively with a licensed contractor. That would conclude my wildfire update. And next up would be hiring a consultant to help us determine the appropriate classification to install energy storage systems. I'm pleased to report that what you'll find on page 35 is an overview of the process. But I'm pleased to report that we have completed the two-phase evaluation process that consisted of reviewing technical written proposals and the second evaluation phase of oral interviews. Today, the Department of Consumer Affairs is assessing the cost component score, and it's our understanding that the Department of Consumer Affairs will post a required notice of intent to award tomorrow for 5 business days. So we'll make sure that we put that on our website with our solar and our solar tab, our solar part of the site, but just so everybody's aware of that. But again, it should be posted tomorrow. Will be available for 5 days. And then finally, an update on our next board meetings. We are proposing to have committee meetings the week of November 2nd. Felice will send out a doodle poll to gauge your availability. The next quarterly board meeting is tentatively scheduled for the week of December the 7th. And again, Felice will send a doodle poll out. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the 3 updates.
Thank you, David. Is there any board comment? Questions? Hearing none. Rick, is there any public comment?
No public comment on these items.
So this was just it was informational. Next is agenda item D4, the administration update, which begins on page 51 of your packet. I will turn it over to Michelle Meliza, Administration Chief, to provide a brief update.
Yes, this is Mike Meliza. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the board. I will begin the Administration Division update with the personnel update starting on page 51 of your board packet. So with the personnel update during the 4th quarter of fiscal year 19-20, CSLB personnel staff completed 13 personnel transactions. This included the addition of 2 new employees from other state agencies and 1 employee new to state service. Within CSLB, 5 employees were promoted and 2 transferred to different units. 1 student assistant and 2 examination proctors were also hired. You can see in charts on the bottom of page 51 for statistics that compare with previous fiscal years. We'll move on to page 52, and I want to highlight the reclassification of enforcement representative series to our investigation classification series. So as part of the 2019-20 strategic plan, the board requested that staff research a special investigator classification series. In November 2019, a classification study performed by CPS HR Consulting recommended utilization of the special investigator classification. CSLB adopted the recommendations and worked with DCA on a formal plan to transition. CalHR approved CSLB's plan, which became effective on July 1st, 2020. So the use of special investigators classification will allow CSLB to effectively compete with other state agencies for most suitable and qualified candidates to fill enforcement division vacancies. So currently, personnel staff are in the process of transitioning 142 enforcement division employees into the new special investigator classification. So it's a very positive development for our enforcement division. We'll move now to our business services update beginning on page 55. All of our facilities developments are on target and everything's looking good there. But I do want to highlight on the bottom of page 55 procurements in process. So in light of budget constraints, all purchases continue to be closely scrutinized and only mission critical items are processed. However, we're focusing on our COVID related PPP items. We're working hard to procure these items, which include masks, gloves, sanitizers, as they become available from our supply sources, which can be tough at times, but staff is working very hard in procuring those items. So it's very high on our radar. So that concludes my report for the Administration Division. If you have any questions, I can answer those now. Thank you.